Attorney James Hamas. I represent the city of Mayville. And the purpose of my comments is to set forth the reasons that the city objects to the proposal that's been submitted to the department. But I want to start out by pointing out to you that the plan which you've been submitted and which you're reviewing proposes that, and I'm going to quote, boundary change shall be accomplished through the adoption by the village of an attachment ordinance under section 66.030710. Where in section 66.0307 is there a provision for an attachment ordinance? There isn't. It's well settled that the law in Wisconsin is that a municipality can exercise only those rights that are granted by the legislature. There is no provision in Chapter 66 or any other statute that I'm aware of that allows for the adoption of an attachment ordinance. If that were the case, why couldn't the city of Mayville adopt an attachment ordinance attaching the entire town of Williamstown? Now, I understand that the department views the procedure here as being one of whether the criteria under 66.0307 are met. But I suggest to you the department take another look at that. If you have different procedures under different statutes, let's talk about annexations, for example. Under the annexation statutes, there are provisions that you take a look at whether they meet certain criteria and you issue an opinion on whether they are consistent with or contrary to the public interest. But if the annexation that's being proposed isn't allowed by the statute, let's say the annexation petition proposes to annex a piece that's in the city, from the village of Kekoskee to the city of Mayville, you wouldn't simply say, well, you can't do that. You can't annex from another village. That's not allowed by the statute, but we're going to ignore that and only look at whether it's in the public interest of these criteria. So I'm suggesting that the department take a look at what authority is there to adopt an attachment ordinance whereby a village attaches an entire town, because that's what's being proposed here. And it doesn't matter, in my opinion, that the department may have allowed this in another procedure where nobody objected to it. So I'm asking you to take a long, hard look at that issue. It's not allowed. What is allowed is detachments, okay? You can detach territory, but the detachment is only from a village to a town. You can't detach territory from a town to a village. You can dissolve a village, correct? Under the statutes, the village, a referendum could be presented to the village of Kekoskee asking that it be dissolved. And if the village board puts that referendum on the ballot and it's approved, the village of Kekoskee would be dissolved. The entire village would become part of the town of Williamstown. You can see in the maps it was completely surrounded. The assets and liabilities would transfer back to the town of Williamstown. Exactly what's being proposed here. Frankly, and I don't want to cast aspersions, but I question whether or not the village has been informed of all these things. We have the same legal counsel representing the town and the village throughout these entire proceedings. This has nothing to do with a consolidation. This has to do, as you heard all the comments, protecting borders, preventing annexations, and stopping the city from exercising extraterritorial zoning and planning rights that the statutes allow the city to do. So again, the first thing I think the department needs to do, and forget about past history, is to take a long, hard look at whether section 66.0307 can be utilized to consolidate, because that's what's happening here, a village and a city. It can't. All right? And I can assure you that irrespective of what your determination is, we will ask the court to rule on that. But I do think it's incumbent on the department to look at that to start with. Now let's talk about the merits of the plan itself. I found it interesting that, what, 3-4 weeks ago, the department issued a statement, a summary of the plan, and asked the town and the village to address certain issues that had not been addressed in the plan, namely the issue regarding compactness, but more importantly, the schedule for providing necessary services to the incorporated municipality. To date, my understanding, nothing has been submitted to the department, which makes it very difficult for the city to address those issues if we don't even know what's being proposed. All I heard was Mr. Parmentier say that the newly created village, quote, will contract for fire, EMS, and police services. What does that mean? You will contract. Who's going to provide those services? What are the terms of those contracts? When do they start? Nobody knows. None of that information has been provided. And I think that it's very, very clear that even if this procedure could be utilized for the purpose of consolidating, which I think is completely contrary to statute, they have not met the criteria by providing a schedule of services that are going to be provided to the, quote, newly incorporated Village of Williamstown. In particular, I would like to address the issue relating to sanitary, sewer, and water service. The city of Mayville has expended millions of dollars constructing a wastewater treatment system and a municipal water system that will provide water and sewer service to areas of the town of Williamstown that are annexed to the city when the property owners decide to do that and when they want to develop their property. The intent here is, and it's very clear from the comments as well as the plan, is to ask for this approval to, according to Mr. Jaworski, stop extraterritorial interference by the city of Mayville. A curious comment, since the statute allows the city to exercise extraterritorial platting approval, and it's intended to protect, this is a quote from one of the slides that Mr. Parmentier put up. A purpose is to protect its territory, that is the town, from other municipalities using its zoning authority. In other words, they want to protect the town from the right of the city to protect the areas surrounding the city of Mayville that eventually are in the future growth area. That's what this is all about. Now, in the documents that I've submitted to you, the first document is our comprehensive plan, the city of Mayville, which lays out where our intended growth is and why it is there. Exhibit number 2 is a map that shows the future growth area taken from that comprehensive plan. Exhibit number 3 shows the areas in that future growth plan, all in the town of Williamstown, for which the city residents and taxpayers have spent millions of dollars in building a sewer and water plant to provide municipal water and sewer service to those properties. The purpose of this plan is to prevent that from occurring unless the new Village of Williamstown decides that it's appropriate to allow someone to develop the property. Forget about the right of annexation, where a property owner can petition for annexation. That's a right in the property. We're going to take that away, and we, the new town board, village board, will decide if we're going to allow annexation and if you can get water and sewer service and if you can develop. That's nonsense. How can you incorporate 18 square miles of territory and make no provision for the extension of municipal water and sewer service, and in fact create a situation where the exact opposite is true? Services are there, but we're not going to allow extension unless we decide, we, the new village board, decide it's appropriate. I would also direct your attention to the exhibit number 6. Glacier Ridge landfill, south of the city of Mayville, in the town, which is going to be part of the proposed incorporation. Look at the contamination emanating from that landfill site. How is the new Village of Williamstown going to provide water or sanitary sewer service to those businesses that are contaminated because of the plume of contamination emanating from that landfill site? They aren't, and they can't. The city has that ability, and we can make that service available, but the city doesn't extend water and sewer service outside its city boundaries. But so what this incorporation is going to do is not only prevent property owners from developing their properties with water and sewer for business and commercial and so on, but it's also going to take away the right of these property owners whose properties have been contaminated from obtaining that service. None of that is addressed in the plan. And when you ask the town and the village to explain their schedule of providing these services, you got an absolute no response. Or if you did, we certainly didn't receive it at the city, so we don't know. And we think that's critical. There is no scheduled service that doesn't meet that requirement. I would also point out that as it relates to the issue of services, the city currently provides EMS and ambulance services to the town and the city, but the city council has adopted a resolution saying that if that happens, if you're going to incorporate the village, all right, then look elsewhere for your services. That doesn't mean, and I know there was a lot of hysterics about that services are going to be cut off automatically and so on, but what it does mean, and frankly, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't mean that the city would ever really do that. It doesn't mean that we would refuse to provide those services. But what it does show to you, and what it does demonstrate to you, is that we have a right to do that. And all they have done is saying, well, we will provide contracts for those in the future. They haven't done that. The comment which I found interesting was the loss of tax base, and sure, the town can address this issue in more detail, but my understanding is the town pays no taxes, right? The tipping fees from the Glacier Ridge landfill site are more than adequate to pay for all of the town taxes that would otherwise be levied on town property, and they also reduce a portion of the school taxes that would otherwise be required of these property owners. So this argument about we need to do this to protect our tax base, really? Are you paying any town taxes to start with? When you lose 100 acres of land because somebody wants to annex to the city and develop, that doesn't impact your tax bill because you're not paying town taxes in the first place. Now, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't think that's been addressed at all in the submittals that have been made to the Department of Administration. It should be. The other thing that I think you should point out is the city of Mayville has adopted a rational, reasonable, comprehensive plan showing development and growth for residential, multifamily, business, and so on. Exhibit number 7 in your tab is a portion of the zoning ordinance from the town of Williamstown. The entire town is an ag preservation zoning. Ag preservation. Why? Ag preservation means it's not going to be developed and won't be developed. So, you have a city, the result of which, if this is approved, will have its borders forever frozen unless the new village decides in their benevolence to allow the detachment of territory for future development. The expenditures for water and sewer that have been made with this in the future will be borne by those existing taxpayers, and there will be no growth. And that affects not only the town and the city and the village, but it affects the school district. And it affects and impacts businesses in the community that want to grow and expand. As I noted, and I included in the exhibits here, while this has been going on, the city's received 2 annexation petitions. These are businesses or property owners that want to expand. They can't. And they won't be able to in the future. So, in summary, what we have here is an effort to misuse a statute relating to cooperative intermunicipal agreements and to accomplish a consolidation of a city and a town, when we all know that if they did follow the consolidation statute, which requires the department to apply the incorporation standards, it could never be met. And they're doing that for one purpose, and that is to prevent future annexations and the growth of the city. And they say to you, oh, well, we will work with them. Oh my goodness, we have tried since 1994 to work with them. I would ask you to take a look at Exhibit 11. A letter dated February 15, 2017 to the city clerk, advising that the village will be working on a cooperative plan with the village of Kekoskee. And it says, quote, please advise of any need for your involvement in drafting the plan. Written comments are also welcome. Then, there's a copy of the resolution attached to that exhibit. And then you go to Exhibit 12. And there's a letter from Mayor Belk in response, and it says, the city of Mayville would be glad to work with you on a cooperative plan. Please send me the dates and times you would like to attend. And then you go to the next page, and you will see that that letter was sent by certified mail on February 24th. And as Mr. St. Peter just told you, it wasn't until less than a month ago that there was any meeting held. So this argument that the city is trying to woe by me, we can't do anything, so on, so that's nonsense. We have attempted to work with them, with the village and the town, but more importantly, I would ask you, and you've been involved in this many times, okay? An agreement in Boundary requires mutual consent. And simply because an offer is made and it's not acceptable to the other party, it doesn't mean that, okay, we made an offer that didn't work, so therefore allow us to consolidate into a new village. You know, I don't have to go through the history, but if attempting to meet and work out a boundary agreements and criteria, please let me know. My client, the town of Brookfield, would be very interested because we've been through that many times more than the town of Williamstown. So, that's all I have to say at this point. I'd be happy to answer any questions that they may have. Thank you.
All right, we will allow the parties Kekoskee and Williamstown and Mayville to do concluding thoughts at the end of the meeting, so we'll come back to them. Right now, we'll start up with public testimony for those that have submitted slips. Again, for those of you who came in, there are slips at the table. Feel free to fill those out. You can choose to testify, or you can just choose to register in favor or in opposition of the plan. So I will take those slips and then we call up those in order. The first one who will speak is John R. Stork, S-T-O-R-C-K.
This is a little different for me in my past profession. I was always the last one to speak, and now I get to be the first one to speak. Yes, my name is John Stork. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Mayville, and I was very active in encouraging community development from 1979 to 1994, at which time I took a 23-year break and became a judge. I'm now retired, and it's very nice not having to wear a tie every day. So it's good to be here and be dressed casually. Although I'm a resident of the city of Mayville, I want to say that I consider my community not to be the city of Mayville. It includes the town of Williamstown. It includes the village of Kekoskee, the village of Leroy. You know, in our little area, we all shop in the same place. We go to the same parks. We go to the same restaurants. We go to the same school. We all cheer for the Mayville Cardinals. And in fact, I had a good time talking to the village treasurer because we had children who went to school together. So regardless what happens in this, I want to encourage everybody here to work for the betterment of our combined community, because you know what? We need one another. None of us can exist in isolation. And so I hope that in the future we can work together. I want to comment on several things. I want to comment on, follow up on Attorney Hemis's comments that in fact this is not a cooperative boundary plan, but really a consolidation of the town and the merger. In fact, in listening to Mr. Jawowski, I couldn't help but hear the terms, these municipalities are going to consolidate, they're going to merge. Those aren't the terms of a boundary agreement, those are the terms of a consolidation. So I want to talk about that. I want to address the misconception that the city of Mayville is somehow stealing the town's land. In fact, I had a good friend when I told him I was coming here, he lives in the town, he said, oh yeah, that's about the town, the city stealing our land. Well, no, we're not stealing the land. In fact, it has not impacted the town financially at all. And then I want to discuss what, even if there is a cooperative boundary plan, that it doesn't comply with, I believe, the standards that you need to use in reviewing that. And I want to consider that first. So why are we here? We're here because the village of Kekoskee was failing. They couldn't get the people to run for their village board. They looked at dissolution. And it doesn't surprise me that the village of Kekoskee was failing. If you look at the village, first of all, the population of the village is 161 people. It's just over the very statutory minimum for incorporation of 150. I tried to get a read as to whether or not it was above or below the 1/2 square mile that is required for the incorporation of the village. I couldn't really determine that. The county couldn't really give me a read. I had two different opinions. But it's the very minimum size of a village. And it wouldn't comply today with the requirements for incorporation of a village. Why? Because for a village like Kekoskee to incorporate, it has to have a developed community center, including some or all of the features such as retail stores, churches, post office, telecommunications exchange, and similar centers of community activity. We're all familiar with Kekoskee here. I'd encourage you to drive through Kekoskee. There isn't a recently developed community center. They have one floral shop. I shop there. They have two restaurant taverns, but that's really it. There is no post office. There's one church. There's no gas station. There's no separate phone exchange. There's no place you can buy food. It really isn't a village. So what we're really looking at here is an agreement that takes a village which is underneath the requirements for incorporation, and we change it from something under 0.5 square miles to something over 19 square miles with in addition of the entire town of Williamstown. I want to say that that's almost 6 times larger than the city of Mayville. I asked the county today, what's the size of the city of Mayville? It's about 3.36 square miles. It's substantially larger than the city. And the 18.74 acres that are currently in the town, if you look at those, they are rural. It has a population of approximately 744. It has 290 housing units. It wouldn't comply with the requirements of density required for a village to incorporate that town into it. So that's the starting point. So we're taking a failing village that doesn't qualify for incorporation today, and we're going to add all of these square miles to it, and somehow that is going to promote appropriate development? Because that's really what a cooperative plan is supposed to do.